New questions now about the role Chris Cuomo played in his brother's sex scandal. As the Attorney General's report finds, the CNN anchor was among the governor's advisors who contributed to the toxic harassment culture. You'll remember the pair appeared together on the younger Cuomo's news show in the early days of the pandemic. Oh, wasn't that fun? But critics slammed Chris for largely ignoring the sexual harassment story on that very same program, all while he helped the governor craft a response to the allegations. In the AG's report, finding that troublesome. Also writing, quote, the reliance on loyal confidants, regardless of their role in state government or lack thereof, contributed to creating an environment where the governor's sexually harassing conduct was allowed to flourish and persist. Whether driven by fear or blinded by loyalty, the senior staff of the executive chamber and the governor's select group of outside confidants looked to protect the governor and found ways not to believe or credit those who stepped forward to make or support allegations against him. Wow. Leo, last night I decided to engage in an act of self-torture and watch the beginning of Chris Cuomo's program. The opening remark was about Simone Biles medaling on the Olympic beam, and then he launched into a tirade against Trump and Alex Azar on COVID. Noticeably absent was any remark on this massive scandal.
Kayleigh, I did the same thing. I hope you took baby Blake and put her in another room so she can watch that.
She was.
Because it was torture. Good. Because let me tell you what's so troublesome about this. It's an inherent conflict of interest. CNN is basically part of this conflict. They allow Chris Cuomo to use their network to protect his brother. This is, and what happened last night, the absence of a #1 major news story and allow him to come on the air and broadcast everything but the misconduct about his brother is outrageous. It is wrong. What is going on? What will happen today and in the future? Chris Cuomo can never, did I say never? Never talk about issues of sexual harassment, sexual misconduct, because he has no credibility given the fact he refused to look at this subject involving his own brother.
It was amazing, which is why I quickly turned back to our good friend Sean Hannity there, Leo.
Yes.
But, yes, the best. Kennedy, what's amazing to me, too, is that, you know, he was moonlighting as a political consultant in the background, literally drafting statements for his brother, Andrew Cuomo. On February 28th, he drafts a statement for Andrew Cuomo saying, this is what you should say about sexual assault. Drafts the statement on February 28th, and I want to play a clip. The very next day, this is what Chris Cuomo says on his program.
Straight with me, I'll be straight with you. Obviously, I'm aware of what's going on with my brother. And obviously, I cannot cover it because he is my brother. Now, of course, CNN has to cover it. They have covered it extensively, and they will continue to do so.
Well, obviously you can't cover it fairly, Kennedy, when he's drafting statements and on phone calls, you know, about these sexual assault allegations.
And there are a lot of women who work at CNN who are very upset about that consultation, because essentially what it does is it attacks the accusers. And, you know, what he was advising his brother is don't give in to cancel culture, as, you know, somehow he's the flavor of the month. That the mob is conspiring against, taking absolutely zero responsibility for his abhorrent behavior. So that's what Chris Cuomo thinks of these women who have been serially harassed and abused by his brother. He thinks that they are lying, he thinks that they are crazy, and he thinks that they are dispensable. And that means that probably is his view of women in general. So if I were working at CNN and I, as a woman, would not want to continue working with him as a co-host, and certainly not where he's considered a journalist.
Yeah, great point. And Emily, this story is bigger than Chris Cuomo even. We have a quote from the Wall Street Journal editorial board that we'll put up that I think says it all. They say that everyone in Albany has known for years that Mr. Cuomo is an abusive, bullying figure. The report describes a man who acted as if he was politically invincible, which is what often happens, and get this, a one-party state with a largely one-party press. That is Democratic.
And adding insult to injury is not only that one-party press, but again, that brother conflict of interest. We heard it here as well in Chris's apology, where he just refers to him as his brother, trying to engender that familiarity and the sympathy from the audience so that they relate to him in this compassionate way rather than seeing it for what it is, which is what the investigator of the Attorney General in the press release yesterday in the presser called the Cuomo administration mobilized to attack and neutralize Ms. Boiler, including use of the press. This was a formalized use of the press to not only cover up Governor Cuomo's wrongdoing, but also, to Kennedy's point, to totally smear these victims and also to cover up the whole COVID nursing home situation. Chris Cuomo was mentioned multiple times in the Attorney General report. Kayleigh, to your point, you referenced it earlier, weighing in on public statements that were released later in the day, but he is absolutely an integral figure to the use of the press as a weapon here.
Yes, and Dagan, all of this adding up to little Cuomo contributing to big Cuomo's very toxic work environment.
Right, and CNN, no standards, no accountability. They had no guidelines in place for the lesser Cuomo to interact and have his brother on, no rules for him. Going back to the beginning of the pandemic, CNN, the causes nausea network. My mother always said, even before I came to work here, she would ask me, why do all those people on CNN look like they're smelling something all the time? Now it turns around that people watching the network have that expression on their face. Like, what is that stench? It's coming right from your TV, and it's named Cuomo.